Corwin had his boss in his arms before her body ever touched the floor. He didn't ask permission. He didn't think about his job, his wages, or the 50 people frozen in that guild hall watching him. He just moved, carrying the most powerful orc woman in Ashenmoor down the corridor like she weighed nothing, shouting her name the whole way. "Stay with me, Vashara. Don't you dare quit on me now." What he didn't know was that hours later, in a quiet corridor of the healing hold, this same woman would pick up a quill and write 6 words on a form that would tear his entire world wide open. To understand why a craft keeper was breaking every rule in Ashenmoor to save a guild master's life, you have to understand how these two people ever crossed paths, because on paper, they should never have exchanged more than 10 words. Corwin was 42 years old, widowed. He had a 9-year-old daughter named Mira, and a mountain of quiet responsibilities that started before sunrise and didn't end until she was asleep. He'd lost his wife, Sera, to the wasting sickness when Mira was 5. In the 4 years since, he'd built his entire life around one simple idea: keep the little girl safe, keep the little girl happy, and never let her feel she was missing anything. He worked the longest shifts of anyone in the guild building. He fixed things at people's desks and never got a thank you. He wore the same 3 patched wool coats on rotation, packed the same lunch every day, and drove a wagon older than most of the apprentices. And he was, without any of them knowing it, one of the finest men that guild had ever employed. Vashara was 36. She was the guild master of the Ashenmoor Trade Guild, the most powerful commercial institution north of the Grey March line. She was orc, full-blooded, sharp-tusked, with tusk caps of polished silver etched with clan markings she wore like armor. She had built the guild with her own hands out of the wreckage of a life that had tried to bury her. To the outside world, she was ice and steel and a jawline that never softened. She'd been profiled in trade gazettes across 3 territories. She'd bought out competitors twice her size. She walked into rooms full of men, human men mostly, who wanted her to fail, and she made them applaud instead. They called her the Winter Queen behind her back. They thought she couldn't hear them. She heard everything. Orc hearing missed nothing. For 3 years, these two people had orbited each other in the same building without colliding. She was on the top floor. He was in the basement, the stairwells, the maintenance rooms. People walked past him like he was part of the wall. Until one night, about 18 months ago, when everything quietly started to change. It was nearly midnight. Corwin had stayed late to fix a burst pipe in the 3rd-floor supply room. On his way out, he'd taken the executive staircase because it was the only one with working lanterns at that hour. When he reached the top floor by mistake, he saw a light in the corner office. He almost turned around. He should have turned around, but something made him walk toward it, his boots quiet on the carpet, until he stood in the open doorway and saw Vashara sitting alone at her enormous desk, head in her hands, shoulders shaking. She was crying, not the controlled kind, the real kind, the kind that comes out when you've run out of the strength to hold it in and you think there's no one left to see. Corwin stood there, and every instinct told him to leave. This was the guild master. He was the man who fixed her pipes. Instead, he knocked softly on the doorframe. Her head snapped up in half a second. Her face changed, wiped clean, hardened, professional. The orc armor slamming down like a portcullis. "This floor is restricted after 10, she said. Cold. Fast. You shouldn't be here. I know. I'm sorry, ma'am. Wrong staircase, I'll go." He turned to leave. Wait. He stopped. She stared at him for a long moment, amber orc eyes still bright from the crying she'd deny if anyone asked. She was trying to decide whether to be angry. "Do I know you?" "Corwin, ma'am." "Craft keeper. I fixed the leak under your window last spring, the one that kept dripping on your certificates." Something flickered in her eyes. "The one that ruined my academy diploma. That one. I ordered you a new frame. Waterproof backed this time." For a second, just a second, the corner of her mouth almost moved. "You didn't have to do that." "No, ma'am. But it was bothering me." A silence settled between them. different from the icy one a minute ago. Then Corwin did something he could never fully explain. Later, he didn't leave. He looked at the mountain of documents on her desk, the 2 dead teacups. The candle burned to a stub, and he said gently, "You eaten anything today, ma'am?" Vishara blinked at him like the question didn't compute. "Excuse me? Food? Have you eaten?" She actually had to think about it. "I don't remember." Corwin nodded slowly, like that answer told him everything he needed to know about her whole life. "There's a tavern 2 streets down, open all night. A man named Sal runs it, makes the best grilled cheese bread in Ashenmoor. And I'm not just saying that." He paused. "You should eat something, ma'am. The guild's not going anywhere in the next 20 minutes. Vishara, who had dismissed men for less than this, who did not take orders, who had spent 15 years teaching the world she needed absolutely no one, looked up at this tired man in a patched coat, standing in her doorway at midnight. "You're the first person in this building to ask me that in 3 years, she said quietly. Corwin's face didn't change, but something in his chest did. "That's a shame," he said. "That's a real shame, ma'am." That was where it started. Not with romance. Neither of them would have used that word. It started with a grilled cheese sandwich at a tavern at midnight, where the guildmaster of a trade empire sat across from the man who fixed her building's pipes and, for the first time in longer than she could remember, ate a full meal and talked to someone who wanted nothing from her. Over the months that followed, it kept happening. Not planned, never planned. That was important to both of them, because planned would have meant admitting. Corwin would stay late. He'd find her light on. He'd knock. Sometimes she'd wave him off, sometimes she wouldn't. He learned that she worked 18-hour days because she was terrified of what would happen if she stopped moving. That she had no family who called her. Her orc clan hadn't spoken to her in 12 years. No friends who weren't employees. No one who checked whether she got home safe at night. Being orc made the loneliness worse. The only orc woman in a human commercial world. She wore her tusk caps and her clan sigils like armor. But who was she wearing them for? At night, alone in her enormous apartment, she took them off because there was no one to see. She learned about him too, not because he told her, because he let pieces slip and then changed the subject. She learned about Mira one evening when his messenger hawk arrived. "That her?" Vishara asked. "My daughter. She's supposed to be asleep." He read the tiny scroll, smiling. "She's telling me the neighbor made cheese and bread, but it wasn't as good as mine." He shook his head. "She's got me wrapped around her whole hand, and she knows it." How old? /9, going on 40. The smile stayed. "She thinks she's raising me." And her mother? The smile faded. "Sera passed 3 years ago. The sickness." He said it plainly, the way people say things they've said 100 times to keep them from crushing them. It was fast in the end. "A mercy," they told me. Didn't feel like one. "I'm sorry." "Yeah, me too." Then he did the thing Vishara would come to understand was simply who he was. He turned the light away from his own pain and pointed it at someone else. "You look tired, boss. When's the last time you took a day off?" She almost lied. She caught herself. "I don't know. Years, maybe." That's not living, Vishara. It was the first time he'd used her name. He didn't even notice. That's just not dying. There's a difference. Nobody talked to her like that. Nobody had ever talked to her like that. The small things started after that. Corwin noticed things. It was his job. A loose bolt, a flickering lantern, a draft where there shouldn't be. One. But now he started noticing her. He noticed she was always cold. Orc physiology ran hot in summer and cold in winter, and the guild building was drafty in ways no one had bothered to fix because no one important enough to complain about it had orc blood. So, one morning she came in to find a small iron stove under her desk, already lit, with a parchment note in blocky handwriting. "Put it out before you leave. Fire hazard. See." He noticed she skipped meals, so twice a week, a wrapped sandwich appeared in the executive cold store with her name on it. and nothing else. He noticed the reading lamp by her chair had been dim for weeks. He fixed it and replaced the oil wick with a warmer one because he'd heard somewhere that warm light was easier on tired eyes. She never caught him doing any of it. That was the point. But she knew, and she started doing things too. The first was Mira's school supplies. Corwin had been in the stairwell, not knowing the acoustics carried straight up to the landing where Vashara happened to be standing. He was talking to the school clerk. "No, I understand. The supply fees due. Can I split it? Half now, half next pay?" "No, I get it. Policy's policy. Let me figure something out. Sorry to be a problem." He'd hung up and stood with his hand over his eyes, 4 floors up. His boss had heard every word. The next day, the school sent word that an anonymous donor had covered the supply fees for Mira and 11 other children. Corwin knew. Of course he knew. He didn't say anything. Neither did she. But the next time he fixed something in her office, he left a note. "Thank you. She's got everything she needs now. See." Vashara kept that note in her top desk drawer for a year. Here's the part that matters. Both of them were falling, and both of them were absolutely certain the other one wasn't. Corwin would drive home some nights and grip the reins and tell himself out loud in the dark, "Don't be an idiot, Corwin. Look at yourself. Look at her." He'd catch his reflection in the wagon's side panel, the gray coming in at his temples, the patched coat, the tired eyes. "She runs a guild worth more than every copper you'll ever see, and you fix her sink. Get your head straight." And Vashara had her own reasons, and they cut deeper. She'd sit alone in her apartment and think about his laugh, about the way he said her name, about the fact that he was the only person on earth who asked if she'd eaten. And then she'd remember the last time she let herself trust someone, and she'd shut everything down. Because Vashara had a secret, a big one, a secret about her past that nobody in that building knew, a secret about why she was so afraid of needing anyone, and it was a secret that would nearly destroy everything before this story was through. For 18 months, 2 lonely people saved each other's lives a little bit at a time, without either of them ever admitting it, until the morning of the guild council meeting, the morning it all fell apart. Corwin almost didn't come to work. Mira had a fever the night before, low but stubborn. He'd been up until 2 in the morning. By dawn, the fever broke. The neighbor, Mrs. Orant, promised to watch her. He'd almost stayed home anyway. If he'd stayed, he wouldn't have been in the building. He wouldn't have been near that hall. But he went. And 3 floors above him, Vashara was getting ready for the most important council meeting of her career, while dangerously, quietly sick. She'd been sick for weeks. She knew it. She just didn't have time. Hostile acquisition on the table, a council half against her, a presentation that could make or break 5 years of the guild. So she did what she always did. Pushed the sickness down, drank her tea, ignored the dizziness, ignored the chest pain she'd been having for 4 days, put on the armor, and walked into that hall to fight. Corwin was on a ladder outside the boardroom fixing a thermostat panel when he heard her voice through the glass, sharp, commanding, in control. Then he heard it change, a word slurred, a sentence trailing off. Every nerve in his body woke up. He looked through the glass. Vashara was standing at the head of the long table, and something was wrong. Her color, the way she gripped the table with both hands. Nobody else noticed. They were looking at their documents, their notes. 50 powerful people, and not one of them was looking at her. Corwin was off the ladder before he made the decision. He saw her knees start to go. He saw the water glass tipping. He shoved the door open so hard it hit the wall, crossed 20 feet of marble in under 2 seconds, and caught her before she hit the floor. He had his boss in his arms, the most powerful orc woman in Ashenmoor, the woman they called the Winter Queen, the woman who'd bought out competitors and stared down hostile councils and never once shown weakness in front of anyone who worked for her, was limp against his chest, and a craft keeper in a patched coat was carrying her down the corridor, past the frosted glass offices, past the marble reception desk where a young woman had her hand over her mouth. "Hold the stairwell," Corwin ordered. Nobody argued. That was the strange thing. For 3 years he'd been invisible in this building. Not today. The guild guard, a big man, former soldier, name was Borak, took one look at Corwin's face and ran ahead to hold the front doors. "You need my wagon, Corwin. Take mine, it's out front." But Corwin's old wagon was parked in the service lane where it always was. He got the door open, laid her across the seat as gently as a father setting down a sleeping child, and climbed up behind the reins. The healing hold waiting room was the coldest, longest place Corwin had ever been. He'd carried her through the doors shouting for help. Healers appeared, took her, rolled her through double doors that swung shut in his face. Then nothing. Nothing to do, nothing to fix, just a wooden chair and a clock on the wall moving backward. He couldn't sit, he paced. He sat, he put his face in his hands and prayed, which he hadn't done since Sera, and he wasn't sure who he was praying to. Please, not this one too. A healer came out with a parchment clipboard. "Are you family? Is she okay? Is she—" "We're evaluating. Are you family, sir?" He opened his mouth, and here was the wall. What was he? Employee? Co-worker? The man who fixes her office? "I'm the one who brought her in. I'm her, He stopped. His hands were shaking. "I don't know what I am to her, but I'm all she's got. There's nobody else coming. It's just me." The healer looked at him, then nodded. "I need you to fill some of this out. What you can." She handed him the parchment. Corwin sat down and looked at the form. Name, date of birth, known conditions. He filled in what he could, left blank what he couldn't. Then he got to a line near the bottom. It was already filled in. The handwriting wasn't his. Neat, slanted, unmistakably hers. She must have filled it out during a previous visit. Emergency contact information, filed away and forgotten. There was his name, Corwin, in her handwriting, listed as the person to call. He stared at that, his heart already doing something painful, because he hadn't known. He hadn't known he was on any form anywhere, as anyone's anything. But that wasn't the line that stopped his heart. Next to his name, the form asked one question, 3 words in small gray ink: relationship to patient. And in that space, in her careful, slanted handwriting, Vashara had not written employee. She had not written coworker. She had not written friend. She had written 6 words: the person who made me believe I wasn't alone. Corwin read them once. His vision blurred. He wiped his eyes and read them again. 6 words in blue ink on an official healing hold form she'd filled out at some quiet moment when she thought no one would ever read it. Corwin put the parchment down on the empty chair beside him, and in the middle of that cold waiting room, under those flickering lamps, he bent forward, elbows on his knees, and wept into his own hands. Quietly, the way strong men cry when they've held it too long. Because for 18 months he had been certain, absolutely certain, that he was invisible to her. And she had written, in the space where you name the one person who matters most, that he was the reason she believed she wasn't alone. He didn't hear the healer come back. He only heard her voice soft from a few feet away. "Sir." He lifted his head. His face was wet, and he didn't hide it. "She's asking for you," the healer said, and she was smiling now. She woke up, first thing she did was ask if the man who carried her in was still here. "What did you tell her?" The healer's smile widened. "I told her he never left. Behind those doors, the most powerful orc woman in Ashenmoor is waiting for a man in a patched coat." And what she's about to tell him, about her past, about the man who just walked into her room in a 5,000 silver suit, about the secret she's been carrying for 12 years, is going to change everything. Part 2 is next. Stay with us. The healer led him down a corridor that smelled of dried herbs and cold stone. With every step, Corwin's heart pounded harder, because he still had the parchment in his hand, and he didn't know what he was going to do with those 6 words now that he'd read them. The healer stopped outside a door. 2 minutes. She's stable, but she's weak. Don't let her get worked up. She put a hand on his arm. Whatever you two have going on, she's lucky to have somebody who runs into a room instead of out of it. I've been doing this 20 years. That's rarer than you'd think. Corwin nodded, not trusting his voice, and pushed the door open. Vashara was propped up in the healing bed, pale beneath the green of her skin in a way that made the orc complexion look almost gray. An herb compress was taped to the back of her hand. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, the way he'd never once seen it in 3 years. She looked smaller. She looked real. And when her eyes found his in the doorway, something crossed her face that she was far too weak to hide the way she always hid it. Relief, naked, undisguised. "You're still here," she said. Her voice was a rasp. "Where else would I be?" He came to the side of the bed, big and awkward, still in his work clothes, the name patch on his chest that said, "Corwin, you scared about 10 years off me, boss. I'm sorry." She said it twice. Victoria Hayes, Vashara, Guildmaster, the woman who apologized to no one, said it twice. "I didn't mean to." "Hey, stop." He pulled the wooden chair over and sat, leaning close. "You've got nothing to apologize for. Your body just cashed a note your schedule's been writing for 18 months. That's all this is." He paused. "The healer talked to you yet?" She looked away. A little. What did he say? That I'm a very intelligent woman making very stupid choices. A ghost of a smile. I told him he could put that on my headstone. Don't. The word came out sharp, sharper than he meant. She blinked. Corwin dropped his eyes to his hands. "Don't joke about that. Not today. I can't take it today." The room went quiet. The herb compressed pulsed faintly. A healer's monitoring charm. Vashara looked at the parchment in his lap, and Corwin watched the exact moment she remembered what was on it. Her whole body went still. "Corwin, is that the intake form?" He didn't answer. "Give me that. Give me the..." "You already filled part of it out," he said it quietly, still looking down. "A while back, must have been a routine visit. You put me down as your emergency contact." She stopped moving. "I didn't know that," he went on. /18 months, Vashara, and I never knew I was on a single piece of parchment anywhere with your name." His voice was doing the thing, the cracking thing. "I don't know what I figured, that I was just the man who fixed your stove." He finally looked up, and his eyes were wet, and he didn't care. "And then I get to the bottom of the page, and there's a line, asks how I know you, relationship to patient. And you didn't write employee, you didn't write friend. Please don't." "You wrote, the person who made me believe I wasn't alone." The monitoring charm pulsed faster. "Is that true?" he asked. "Vashara, look at me. Is that true, what you wrote?" For a long moment, she didn't say anything. A tear slid from the corner of her eye sideways into her hair. She made no move to wipe it. "I filled that out 4 months ago," she finally said, very softly. "There was a scare, chest pains. I came in alone at night, and they gave me that parchment and asked who to call if something happened." She laughed, but there was no humor in it, just something breaking. "And I sat in that waiting room, 36 years old, running the most powerful guild in the territory, and I realized I did not have a single person on this earth to write down. My clan hasn't spoken to me in 12 years. No siblings. The man I was supposed to bond with left me at the worst moment of my life. Everyone else is on my payroll." She turned her head and looked at him. The ice was completely gone, all of it. Underneath was just a frightened, lonely orc woman. "And then I thought of you, and I wrote your name before I even decided to. And when the healer asked how I knew you, I couldn't make my hand write employee because that's not, you were never..." She couldn't finish. Corwin reached out and took her hand, the one without the compress, and folded it inside both of his rough, calloused ones. "Say it," he whispered. "Whatever it is, I've been dying to hear it for 1.5 years. "You're the only person who ever wanted nothing from me," Vashara said. Everyone wants something. Money, access, a contract, my name on their project. And you? You just wanted to know if I'd eaten. You put a stove under my desk and signed the note. Fire hazard. Like I was some child you were looking after. Her voice broke. And I would sit at that desk some nights and I would cry, Corwin, because I couldn't remember the last time anyone was that kind to me without sending an invoice. Corwin pressed her hand to his forehead and closed his eyes. I thought you didn't see me, he said into her knuckles. I told myself that 100 times, so I wouldn't hope. You were the only thing I saw. For one long, suspended moment, the monitoring charm pulsing, the lamp humming, two people who'd spent 18 months lying to themselves finally stopped. And then the door opened. Guild Master Vashara, we've got your readings back, and I need to. The healer stopped, took in the scene. The held hands, the two wet faces. Cleared his throat. I can come back. No, Vashara said, pulling her hand back. The armor tried to click into place. It didn't fit right anymore. Tell me. The healer's face was the kind of careful that made Corwin's stomach drop. He came in, shut the door, and pulled up her chart. Your collapse wasn't just exhaustion. Your heart is showing significant strain. Stress damage to the muscle, combined with an underlying rhythm disorder we didn't know about. The combination is what put you on that floor today. What does that mean? Corwin said. In plain words, it means if Guildmaster Vashara continues at this pace, the next episode may not end in a healing bed. This was a warning, a loud one. He looked at Vashara. You need real rest, weeks, not days, and you need follow-up care you cannot skip. Vashara was already calculating. Corwin could see it in her jaw. The acquisition, the council, the quarterly numbers. The council meeting, she said. I was in the middle of Vashara. Corwin's voice was low. There's a deal on the table. I can't just Vashara. I carried you out of that room today, he said, and his voice was shaking. You were dead weight in my arms. Your head was rolling. Your eyes were gone, and I was running thinking I was about to watch two women I loved die in front of me. His voice broke on the word loved. He didn't take it back. I already did that once. I held Sera's hand while she went. I promised myself I'd never be that helpless again. So you can fight me on the stove and the sandwiches, and me being on your form, but you are not going to fight me on this. Tears ran freely down Vashara's face. I don't know how to stop, she said. I've been running since I was 24. If I stop, I don't know what's there. In the quiet, I'm scared of what's there. Then you're not going to stop alone, Corwin said. That's the whole thing you keep getting wrong. You keep thinking you've got to do the hard parts yourself. You don't. Not anymore. That was the moment. The walls coming down. Except they didn't get to keep it, because the door opened again, without a knock this time, and a man in a 5,000 silver coat walked in like he owned the healing hold and every person in it. Corwin didn't know him, but he watched Vashara's entire face change. The relief drained, the color went, the armor, the old armor, slammed back down harder than he'd ever seen it. Her hand pulled out of his so fast it was like she'd been burned. Vashara, the man's voice was smooth, practiced. I came the moment I heard. Are you all right? Richard Aldrich. Her voice was flat. What are you doing here? You collapsed in front of the entire council. He came further in, and only then did his eyes flick to Corwin, taking in the patched coat, the name patch, the work boots, dismissing him in a single downward glance, the way you'd glance at a piece of furniture. And who's this? Your wagon driver? Something went hot in the back of Corwin's neck. He didn't move. He'd been dismissed by better-dressed men his whole life, but he saw the way Vashara wasn't answering, the way her hands had started to tremble on the blanket. Lord Aldrich is on my council, Vashara said, carefully. He's also the man who's about to save this guild from the mess today created. Aldrich cut in. The smoothness had an edge now. Because while you were being carried out of that meeting by the help, The council was watching their guild master drop like a stone in front of the biggest deal of the decade. He paused. Do you have any idea how that looked? Get out, Corwin said quietly. Aldrich turned, as if noticing him for the first time. Excuse me? She has a heart condition. The healer just told her she can't take stress. And you walked in here and made her hands start shaking. So I'll say it one more time, nice and polite. Get out. For a moment, the two men just looked at each other. You have no idea who I am, do you? Aldrich said. Nope, and I don't much care. Corwin. Vishara's voice was strained. Leave it, please. And there was something in the way she said it, something pleading, frightened, that made Corwin go still, because he'd never heard Vishara plead for anything. Aldrich caught it. A slow, ugly understanding spread across his face as he looked between them. Oh, Vishara, he said softly, tell me you haven't. The craft keeper? He shook his head. After everything, you let yourself get sentimental. That's enough, Vishara said. But her voice had lost all power. Does he know? Aldrich was looking directly at Corwin now, smiling. Does he know about you? About where you came from? About what you really did to build all this? He gestured broadly. About the reason your own clan won't take your hawks. Get out, Aldrich. I'm asking as a courtesy. Next time, it'll be through my advocates. Aldrich held up his hands. I'm going, but you and I need to talk before that council reconvenes Thursday. I can protect you like I always have, or I can let them do what they've wanted to do for 2 years. He looked at Corwin one last time. Enjoy your little moment, pal. Men like you never last around women like her. You're a phase. The door clicked shut. The monitoring charm was pulsing too fast. After a long silence, Corwin said, Who was that? You should go home. Mira, she's sick. You should be with her. Mrs. Orant has Mira, and the fever broke. Who was that man? Corwin, please. 10 minutes ago, you told me I was the only person who ever wanted nothing from you. You wrote it on a form in ink, so don't shut the door on me now. That's the one thing I can't take. Her eyes filled. He's my ex-betrothed. Corwin went very still. The one who left, he said. Except he didn't just leave. Her voice was hollow. That's the clean version. She told him everything. 24 years old. A young orc woman, first time in the human commercial world. Aldrich Venn, handsome, connected. A human lord who told her she was special. She'd come from nothing. An orc clan that didn't value daughters the way it valued sons. She'd clawed through guild training on stubbornness and spite, and here was this man telling her she mattered. He was running a fraud, moving money that wasn't supposed to move, cooking numbers for important clients. And, one night, he came to her and told her the Royal Trade Inspectors were starting to look, and someone needed to sign a set of documents that would make everything look legitimate. Someone clean, someone junior, someone in love enough to do what she was told. You signed them, Corwin said quietly. I signed them. God help me, I signed them. She was crying openly now. He told me it was routine. He told me we were building a future, and I was 24, and I trusted him more than my own eyes. The investigation collapsed before charges came down. Sheer luck, a bigger target surfaced. But Aldrich kept the documents, every one with her seal on them. And 4 years ago, when he needed money and she was already successful, he came back. A council seat, a percentage of the guild. In exchange for his silence, for 4 years, I've been paying a man who committed a crime and blamed it on me to keep sitting at my table. The room was silent. I've been carrying this for 12 years, Vishara whispered. It's the reason I built walls. The reason my clan won't speak to me. They found out about the documents, not the truth behind them, just the fact of them. I'm a disgrace to them, and I let it happen because telling the truth meant losing everything. Corwin stood at the window, his back to her shoulders rigid. Vishara watched him and felt her heart cracking because this was the moment. the one she'd feared. The good man turning around and looking at her differently. "Say something," she whispered. "Even if it's that you're leaving." Corwin turned around, and his face wasn't disgust. It wasn't judgment. It was fury, but not at her. "You were 24, he said. "A kid in love with a man who spent months grooming you to be his fall. And you've spent 12 years punishing yourself for a crime he committed." He crossed the room and took her face in both hands. "That's not the same thing. Do you hear me? You didn't do a bad thing. A bad man did a bad thing to you and made it look like your fault." She was sobbing now, the kind that comes when a wound you've kept sealed for a decade finally gets touched by someone gentle. "He'll ruin me," she managed. "Thursday. He'll ruin all of it." "No," Corwin said. "He won't." Something in his voice made her go still. "I've spent 20 years fixing things nobody else could figure out," Corwin said. A hard, quiet certainty she'd never seen. "A blackmailer is just a busted valve. All that pressure's got to have somewhere to go. You just need to find the leak." He sat on the edge of the bed. "The old fraud, how long ago? / 12 years. The royal statutes on trade fraud, they expire after 10 years. Marin told me that when Sera was sick and the healing hold tried to cheat us, Bashara went very still. The statute has run out. Those documents he's holding, they're an empty threat. They've been empty for 2 years, and he never told you because the whole thing only works if you're too afraid to look at it straight. But the blackmail is happening right now, today. That's a crime in progress. Every dividend he collects, every council vote he casts, every time he threatens you, that's fresh. That's current. And the second he waves those documents in front of witnesses, he confesses to 4 years of extortion on top of a fraud he committed himself." Vashara stared at him. "How do you know how to think like this? / 20 years fixing broken things. You learn how everything's connected." He paused. "But I can't do the next part. I need someone who knows the law. Someone who isn't on his payroll. I don't have anyone I can trust. Every advocate I know does business with people Aldrich knows. I might know someone." Corwin was quiet a moment. "When Sera was dying, a healing hold tried to overcharge us. A legal aid advocate named Marin Okafor took our case for free and buried them. Toughest person I've ever met." He looked at Vashara, "And she owes nobody in your world a single thing." He called Marin that night from the healing hold corridor. She listened for 11 minutes without interrupting. Then she said, "Let me make sure I've got this. Your boss, who you're clearly in love with, don't argue, got groomed at 24 into signing fraudulent documents by a predator who's been blackmailing her since. And now he's threatening to destroy her at a council meeting unless she keeps letting him bleed her guild. That's the size of it." "Corwin," Marin said, "I have been waiting my entire career for a case like this. Tell that woman she is not losing her guild, and that man is going to deeply regret the day he handed a quill to a scared 24-year-old. Then, late that night, Vashara's hawk arrived with a message from Aldrich. He'd moved the meeting, not Thursday, tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock. He knew about Marin. He was jumping them before they could file anything. Corwin didn't panic. "Call Marin right now." Marin listened. Then she laughed, low and dangerous. "A confident man lets you walk in Thursday with all your advocates and crushes you slow. A scared man changes the rules at midnight. He just told us we're on the right track." She laid out the plan. It required Vashara to do the one thing she'd sworn for 12 years she would never do. Tell the truth, out loud, in front of the entire council. Before Aldrich could, he's got one weapon, the threat of exposure. We take it out of his hands. You walk in, and before he says a word, you tell that council. Everything, not as a confession. As an accusation. A victim coming forward about her own blackmailer isn't a criminal. She's a whistleblower. And when he can't help himself, Corwin added, when his ego makes him wave those documents around one more time, he confesses to the new crime in front of 12 witnesses. And a royal trade inspector, Marin finished, who owes me a very large favor and has agreed to be present as an observer." Vishara was crying silently. "And if it doesn't work, then you lost a guild," Corwin said quietly. "And you kept your name. And your name is the thing he stole from you 12 years ago." He squeezed her hand. "You told me tonight that if you lost everything and kept me and Mira, you'd come out ahead. Did you mean that?" "I meant it. Then you've got nothing to lose that matters. Which is exactly what makes you dangerous." Vishara closed her eyes. 12 years of fear against one night of something stronger. "Okay," she said. "I'll do it." At 6 in the morning, Corwin was in Vishara's kitchen making eggs. The kitchen had clearly never cooked a real meal. Copper pans still in their wrapping, a cold store full of nothing, a stove that hadn't been lit in months. He found eggs and bread in the market basket Mrs. Orant had dropped off the night before, because Mrs. Orant was the kind of neighbor who heard things through walls and responded with food rather than questions. Vishara came out in a charcoal coat that probably cost more than his wagon. She stopped in the doorway. "What?" Corwin said, sliding eggs onto a plate. "Nothing." Her voice was thick. This is what it looks like, isn't it? A person in your kitchen in the morning. Somebody making you eat before the worst day of your life." She pressed her hand to her mouth. "I'm 36 years old, and I never knew what it looked like." Corwin set the pan down, crossed the kitchen, and took her face in his hands. "Get used to it. Now eat. You can't take down a monster on an empty stomach." At 6:50, they walked into the guild building. Marin met them in the lower hall, and beside her stood a quiet woman in a navy coat with a Royal Trade Inspector's seal clipped inside her jacket. "This is Inspector Reyes," Marin said. "She's here as an observer. She says nothing unless something is said that requires her to act." Reyes gave a short nod. "I'm just here to listen, Guildmaster, but I listen very carefully." They rode the staircase up in silence, and at the top, Corwin started to hang back, to step aside, because this was the executive floor, the council hall, the world he'd only ever entered to fix the thermostat. Vishara grabbed his sleeve. "No, you come in. You sit right behind me. I need to turn around and see your face." "Vashara, I'm a craft keeper. You're the person who made me believe I wasn't alone." Her voice didn't shake. "I wrote that on a form when I thought I was dying. I'm not leaving you at the door when I finally get to live." And Corwin walked into the council hall of the Ashenmoor Trade Guild in a clean patched coat. He sat in the chair directly behind the guildmaster's seat, folded his rough hands in his lap, and waited. Lord Aldrich Venn was already there, far end of the table, surrounded by 11 council members in a suit that gleamed with silver thread. He'd been working them. Corwin could see it in the room, the way a few wouldn't meet Vishara's eyes, the temperature already set against her. Aldrich smiled when she walked in, the smile of a man holding 4 aces. "Vishara, so relieved you felt well enough. After yesterday, we were all so worried. The concern was performance. A good one, but I'm afraid we have difficult things to discuss. Questions about leadership, stability, whether this guild can afford a guildmaster who collapses under pressure at the most critical moment in our history." A few heads nodded. The trap was closing. Vishara did not sit down. She stood at the head of the table and let the silence stretch. And Corwin watched her draw one long breath and knew she was standing at the edge of the cliff she'd been running from for 12 years. And then she jumped. "Before this council discusses my leadership," Vishara said, and her voice rang clear across that room, "there's something you need to know, something I should have told you a long time ago. I'm going to tell you myself before anyone else in this room tells you their version." Aldrich's smile flickered. "12 years ago," she said louder, cutting over him. "When I was 24 years old, I was betrothed to a man who worked with me at an investment house. That man convinced me to sign a set of documents. I didn't know what they were. I trusted him. I loved him. Those documents were fraudulent." Dead silence. Every head came up. "He set me up." Her voice was shaking, but she did not stop. "He engineered the entire thing so that if anyone ever went down, it would be me. My seal, my name, not his. And when the danger passed, he kept those documents, and he has held them over my head ever since. Aldrich was on his feet. This is insane. She's clearly unwell. Sit down, Aldrich. Something in her voice, 12 years of swallowed rage breaking loose, put him back in his chair. 4 years ago, Vashara said, turning to the council, that same man came to me here, at this guild, and told me that unless I gave him a seat on this council and a share of everything I'd built, he would release those documents and destroy me. And I was so afraid. Her voice cracked. Corwin behind her ached to reach out. But this was hers. This had to be hers. I was so afraid of what you would think of me, of losing everything I'd fought for, that I paid him. For 4 years, I let a man who committed a crime and blamed it on me sit on my council, because I was too ashamed to tell the truth. She turned slowly and looked down the table at Aldrich. His name is Lord Aldrich Venn, and he is sitting at this table right now. The room erupted. Aldrich had gone gray under his tan, and here was the moment. The whole plan balanced on what he would do in the next 30 seconds. Marin had said it. His ego won't let him stay quiet. A cornered predator reaches for the weapon, and Aldrich Venn, cornered, humiliated, watching the room turn against him, did exactly that. You want the truth? Fine. He stood, the smooth mask gone. I have the documents, Vashara, every page with your seal. Fraud. And if this council removes me, those documents go to the royal inspectors, the gazettes, and every trade partner you have by end of day. So think carefully, because I can end you with one letter. From the back, a quiet voice spoke. I'm sorry, said Inspector Reyes, stepping forward, opening her coat to show the royal seal. Did you just say you've been in possession of evidence of a crime for 4 years and using it to extort a council seat and guild profits from Guildmaster Vashara? The color drained completely from Aldrich's face. Who? This is a private council meeting. Royal Trade Inspector Elena Reyes. I'm here as a guest of the Guildmaster's advocate. She nodded toward Marin, who gave Aldrich a small, terrible smile. And what you just described, withholding evidence and using it to extort money and position over a period of years? That's not one crime, that's several. You just confessed to all of them on the record in front of 12 witnesses and a royal inspector. She tilted her head. Would you like to say it again? I want to be sure I have it right. Corwin watched Aldrich Venn understand, in real time, that he had walked directly into a trap he'd built himself. Brick by brick, over 4 years of thinking he was untouchable. And as for the original documents, Marin said, stepping forward, the statute of limitations on that alleged fraud expired 2 years ago. Those papers can't be used to charge my client with anything. They're worthless, she smiled. You've been threatening her with an empty weapon, betting she'd never look closely enough to notice. Well, she looked. Elder Harwick, white-haired, the longest-serving council member, stood up slowly. I've served on this council 9 years, Vashara. I wish you'd told us. We'd have stood with you. He looked around the table. We're standing with you now. One by one, the other council members nodded. Aldrich was escorted from the building by guild security. 10 minutes later, with Inspector Reyes and Marin walking directly behind him. He did not look powerful anymore. He looked like exactly what he was. A small, cruel man watching his entire world collapse the moment one woman refused to be afraid. When the room cleared, when it was just the two of them, Vashara sank into her chair at the head of the long table and started to shake. Not from fear, from the sheer overwhelming release of putting down something she'd carried for 12 years. Corwin was beside her in an instant, on his knees next to her chair. I did it, she whispered into his shoulder. It's gone. He's gone. I've been so afraid for so long, and it's just gone. You did it, not me, not Marin. You stood up in front of all of them and told the truth. He pulled back and looked at her. I always knew you were the strongest person in this building. Now everybody else knows it too. She laughed. Shaky, wet, free. The strongest person in the building fainted in this exact room 3 days ago. Yeah, well, The strongest person in the building also had a craft keeper who wasn't going to let her hit the floor. Then Bashara did something Corwin had never seen. She reached up and unclasped her tusk caps, the polished silver sheaths she wore every day, etched with clan markings, the armor she'd put on every morning for 12 years. She set them on the council table. "I wore these as a wall," she said, "not because I belong to a clan. My clan hasn't spoken to me in 12 years. I wore them so nobody would see past them, so nobody would get close enough to find out what was underneath." She looked at him with bare tusks, unadorned, unsheathed, the most vulnerable an orc could be. "What do you see?" she asked. "Right now, without the armor." Corwin looked at her. The amber eyes, the bare tusks, the face that had spent 12 years behind silver and ice, and the particular armor of a woman who'd been taught that love was a weapon people used against you. "I see you," he said. "Same person I've seen since the night I knocked on your door and asked if you'd eaten." She put the tusk caps in his hand. "Keep them," she said, "so I remember what it felt like to take them off." The dinner almost didn't happen. Bashara stood outside Corwin's apartment door a week later, holding a bottle of sparkling cider because she didn't know what you brought to a house with a 9-year-old. And she could not make her hand knock. She'd faced down a hostile council, stared down a blackmailer, and she stood frozen outside a craft keeper's door because a child was on the other side, and children could not be negotiated with or out-strategized. The door opened before she knocked. Corwin stood there, and behind him, peeking around his leg, was a small girl with serious dark eyes and 2 missing front teeth. "You were standing out there a long time," Mira said. "I watched through the peephole. Why didn't you knock?" "I was scared," Bashara admitted. Mira considered this gravely. "Of us? Of you, mostly. Your dad's easy." Mira broke into a gap-toothed grin, delighted because no adult had ever admitted to being scared of her, and grabbed Bashara's hand and pulled her inside. "I'm not scary. I made you a horse. A purple horse. Because purple is the best color. And Daddy said you were sad in the hospital, and horses make people not sad." "I have that horse," Bashara said, and her voice caught, "on my cold store. It's the only thing on it. It's the best thing anybody's given me in years." Mira beamed. Corwin, watching from the doorway, had to look away and blink hard. Dinner was spaghetti, because that was what Corwin made when it mattered. And Bashara, who had eaten in the finest halls across 4 territories, declared it the best meal she'd ever had. She meant it, because the difference wasn't the food. The difference was that somebody had made it for her. She watched Corwin cut Mira's bread without being asked, watched him really listen to a 9-year-old's 20-minute story about a playground dispute, watched a man be gentle in a way she had not known men could be gentle. After dinner, Mira fell asleep on the couch between them. Her head on Bashara's arm, the orc woman sat perfectly still for 2 hours so as not to wake her. "She likes you," Corwin whispered. "How can you tell?" "She fell asleep on you. She doesn't do that with people she's not sure about." He smiled. "Kids are honest in ways adults forget. She decided you were safe. That's the highest compliment you'll ever get in this house." Bashara looked down at the sleeping child, a human girl curled against an orc woman's arm, and her eyes filled. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Family. I never had a good one." "Nobody has a map," Corwin said. "You just show up every day and love them harder than you're scared. That's the whole thing." Corwin proposed on an ordinary Tuesday night, at his kitchen table, with Mira as co-conspirator. There was no grand gesture. He knew the woman he was asking, and he understood that the whole point of them was that it had never been about the grand version of anything. Mira brought out a plate. On it, instead of dinner, was a bond bracelet, simple silver wire, hand-twisted, with 2 symbols worked into the clasp, a human shield mark on one side, an orc tusk growth sigil on the other, side by side. "Daddy picked it," Mira announced. "But I picked the plate. And I have to ask you the question because Daddy said you'd say yes faster if I did it." Bashara was already crying. Mira read carefully from a piece of paper she'd rehearsed. Will you be in our family for real? Daddy says you already are, but we should make it. She squinted. Off a seal. So there's paperwork. Because Daddy said last time there wasn't paperwork, and that was the only thing missing. Vishara looked up at Corwin, who had come around the table to kneel beside his daughter, both of them looking up at her. This man and this child, this whole entire family that had become the only thing she'd ever really wanted. Yes, she said. Yes, to both of you. To all of it. Mira cheered and threw her arms around Vishara's neck. Corwin slid the bracelet onto the wrist of a woman who could have bought the silversmith's entire shop, and she looked at it like it was the crown jewels, because in every way that mattered, it was. They were bonded in the spring, in a small ceremony. Vishara, who could have filled a cathedral with important people, wanted only the handful who'd actually shown up when it counted. Elder Harwick walked her down the aisle. Marin cried, claimed allergies. Mrs. Orant cooked. Mira was the flower girl and took the job with such seriousness that she inspected each row for petal distribution and went back once to correct an uneven patch. They went back to the healing hold, found the healer who'd handed Corwin the parchment that day. Her name was Grace. Vishara took both her hands. You handed my husband a form. On that form there was a line I'd filled out one night when I thought I was going to die alone, and he read it. Everything after that came from those 6 words. She squeezed the healer's hands. That parchment saved my life before the medicines ever did. Grace cried and hugged them both. And Corwin stood there with his arm around his wife in the same corridor where he'd sat on the floor and begged not to lose one more woman he loved. The answer had come, not the way he'd asked, but fuller and stranger and better than anything he'd have known to pray for. On the hard days, because there were still hard days, life doesn't stop being life just because you found the right person. Corwin would find Vishara wherever she'd gone quiet, and he'd sit beside her. And he'd ask the same question he'd asked a crying orc woman in a corner office at midnight 2 years before everything changed. You eat today? And every single time it would make her cry a little, and then laugh, and then lean into him. Because those 3 words had become the whole language of their love. Shorthand for, I see you, I've got you, you're not alone anymore. 2 coats hung by the door, 1 patched wool, 1 charcoal silk. 2 mugs on the table every morning, a purple horse on the cold store, permanent, the best thing in the apartment, and a bond bracelet on an orc woman's wrist. Silver wire with 2 symbols, human shield and orc tusk. Because a man who'd spent 20 years fixing broken things had decided the most important thing he could build was a bridge between 2 worlds. And he'd done it the way he did everything else, quietly, carefully, without asking for credit. 1 small act of kindness at a time. Vishara stopped wearing the tusk caps. She didn't need the armor anymore. She wore the bracelet instead. Thanks for staying to the end. If this story reminded you that the strongest thing a person can do is ask, have you eaten? If a form in a healing hold and 6 words in blue ink proved that being seen is the thing that saves us, then you already know what Orc Tears is about. We tell stories about people who carry each other when the world says they should walk alone. Subscribe, because there are more coming. Drop a comment. Tell us which moment landed hardest. Stay with me, Vishara. The Midnight Sandwich. Fire hazard. C. The form. The person who made me believe I wasn't alone. The tusk caps on the table. Mira's purple horse. Will you be in our family for real? Or you eat today. We read every one. See you in the next story.